Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us today for our webinar. We are delighted to have you learn a little bit more about our medicine, society, and culture concentration within our Master's in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program here at Case Western Reserve University. I'll start by introducing myself. So I am Dr. Leah Jeanette. I'm the director of the master's program and associate director of education within our department. I'm also a clinical ethicist at university hospitals. And I am also a very proud alum. I graduated from the program in 2009. Um, One of the things I always like to highlight to students is our program is ever growing and changing. The things that work, we keep in our program, and we also, see how we can do those specific things better, and we'll highlight some of those today. But then we're also looking for new things to add to the program over the years. And this concentration that we're talking about today, medicine, society, and culture, is one of those things. It did not exist as a concentration when I did the program. We only had one concentration, which was research ethics. Um, in 2016, or excuse me, 2017, we formally changed the name of the program to add the and medical humanities. We had already been incorporating it in the curriculum, but we formally changed the name of the program and introduced this medicine, society, and culture concentration. So it's really amazing to see now in our ninth year, that eighth year, ninth year, I don't, math is hard, to see how this concentration has grown and the experiences the students have in it and through it in our program. So I want to introduce our two panelists. We have two students. They are both currently in the master's program in the Medicine, Society, and Culture concentration. So Hiba, I'm going to have you introduce yourself first. I think I put a little bit of both of their information up here so students had a kind of a basis of their backgrounds. But Hiba, if you could just tell us a little bit more about like why you chose the program, perhaps, and then we'll talk more specifically about MSc in a little bit. And then Kayla, I'll turn it over to you to also answer that same question.
Sure. So I'm Hiba Ali. I joined the bioethics program because I was really interested in looking at this side of medicine that we don't normally talk about. I think that there's so many different complexities and different perspectives with medicine and healthcare that it's really important that you get that education to better navigate these situations and understand people. And especially since I do want to work specifically as a general pediatrician, that I was very interested in learning about these different ways of navigating these topics and getting a better idea and basis of these different situations. I also want to work in underserved populations, and so that's just another reason why I think it's very important to get this training.
Kayla?
Awesome. I'm Kayla. I just absolutely fell in love with the bioethics department when I took my first class, and I think that the field of bioethics just translates so well to at least the experiences that I've had clinically in the area, and it's just such an incredible way to really be able to connect with and be able to see hospitals in the area. It's been such an interesting program, and especially with my philosophy background and my biology background, it was just the absolutely perfect combination of things. So, yeah, I've loved my time here.
Thank you both. So, all right. Just kind of a quick overview. So I'm going to just highlight briefly Case Western Reserve University and the School of Medicine if you're not familiar with it. We'll then dive into actually talking about medical humanities, social medicine, like what is it? How do we describe it? How do we think about it? We'll talk about the master's program kind of at a very high level and then dive into the MSc concentration. At the very end, I'll wrap up with application information, financial aid information, and we will leave it open for Q&A as well. So if you're joining us live here on Zoom, please feel free to use the Q&A feature to post questions throughout the presentation. We'll save them till the end, but if something comes to mind that you want to ask, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A, and so then we'll answer it at the end. If you are joining us watching the recording, You can email us bioethics@case.edu with your questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I see that. All right, so Case Western Reserve University, we are a research level one university located in Cleveland, Ohio. I think what's really amazing about Case is while we have a very strong undergrad program, we actually have more graduate and professional students than undergrads. Our graduate professional programs are very strong at Case. They are nationally ranked in a lot of different categories, which is amazing, which also translates to a lot of student opportunities. And I think that's really important to kind of to think about. Um, we are located in the School of Medicine. Our Department of Bioethics and our MA program is in the School of Medicine. Our School of Medicine is number one in Ohio. We're considered a top tier according to US News and World Report. We are, in terms of research, we have a lot going on in the medical school. We are number 7 in the US and number 22 in the world for impact ranking, and then very high ranking by the Blue Ridge when it comes to NIH funding. There was recently a new ranking that came out from Time Magazine. They looked primarily at student outcomes as opposed to like the application competitiveness. And based on application outcomes, Case Western Reserve as a whole university ranked number 25 in the world, which was an incredible honor to see in an entirely new ranking system that really focused on outcomes, which I think is a unique way to look at colleges and their impact on the world. So the things we're very proud of. I'm going to transition us to talk more kind of about the topics now. And so one of the questions we get asked quite often, I get asked this, pretty regularly in both my professional life, but also my personal life. Like, why study bioethics and medical humanities? Why does it matter? Why do we think about these things? And one of the many reasons is that healthcare impacts all of us. Health is a very broad concept, very wide-reaching concept, and it impacts all of us, whether it's our own health or healthcare, or it's our loved ones, whether it's in politics or it's in personal or it's in professional, right? It's everywhere. And so there's direct impact on all of us. One of the big things I also think about too is that we have constant advancements. Science is progressing, medicine is progressing, technology is progressing. How we approach healthcare changes. Ultimately, it leads to big questions. And just as a sampling, questions we think about are, should we intervene? What kind of values should inform policy and practice? And I would add, what kind of cultural issues or social issues also impact and inform that policy and practice? And questions like, can we, and frankly, should we ensure justice and respect for persons in research and clinical practice? Those are very broad questions. Right, your answer may be yes or no, but then there's the follow-up question is why? And that's where the challenge is. And another follow-up question of how do you implement it, right, becomes a challenge. And who is implementing it and who is affected by those implementations? And so these are big, big, challenging questions. And bioethics and medical humanities is a great area and tool and thought process and processes to help really wrestle with these.
I
So,
also
yeah, go ahead.
just wanted to jump in that even outside of like the healthcare spectrum, the topics that we've discussed and the conversations we've had in this master's program have helped me talk about other topics in the world at a large. I know a lot of times I debate with my sisters, and so it lets me win some debates sometimes and just gives me a different way of looking at, if you talk about autonomy and justice, these different concepts that are integral to a lot of different parts of life outside of healthcare as well.
Hiba, I think that's a really good point in that, yes, our focus is healthcare, but these concepts have broader application as well. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Um, so within our master's program, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we do have concentration. So one concentration is called Medicine, Society, and Culture. And it really is focusing in on medical humanities and social medicine in particular. And it thinks about exactly as the title of this webinar is, which is Health Beyond Biology, right? So often the central focus in medicine and healthcare is the biology, the physical, the mental, the how the body is working, the systems in the body, the science of it. But there's so much more that impacts health than just our DNA and how things are working or not working. And so we think about these additional areas. Um, so Kayla and Hiba, I really would love for you to answer the second part of this question, right? So medical humanities really is kind of the non-health or non-biology part of healthcare. And I would even argue that to some extent, bioethics can also be a part of that question, but it also could be part of medical humanities underneath it or next to it. So there's a lot of overlap. But I'd love to hear from you, from either one of you, of why do you think these things matter? I mean, you both chose to do additional deep dives into this. So why do medical humanities and social medicine perhaps matter?
I think that, at least in my experience, humanities are kind of viewed, especially by the medical community, as just like, oh, humanities, just like having feelings and emotions. And I think in my time in this program, I've learned that it's so much more than that. And being able to look at how bioethics and medical humanities presents in literature and noticing it in the world around me has really helped me to be able to kind of incorporate it into my daily life and even into my practice. Even though I'm not a physician yet, like working in the healthcare field, I've been able to kind of have this completely different lens. Um, One of my favorite things that we did, we read Frankenstein in our medicine, society, and culture class, and that was just such an interesting, never a book that I would have read with that lens specifically, and being able to do that was absolutely fascinating. And even looking at, like, for example, how CPR, how resuscitation is viewed in the media, in literature, it's seen as a very not as intense as it is in real life. And so that's something I've been able to see in literature and media versus in my clinical rotations, watching somebody be resuscitated. Those are two completely different things, and the implications that that has on decision making and how families proceed with a family member that they love. It is just an entirely new lens that I've developed. So it absolutely matters, is my answer.
And to add on to that, I think because it's not too closely related to the way we normally talk about biology, it makes it all the more important. There's so many different parts of someone's health that can be easily overlooked or forgotten, and this kind of recenters our conversations on these topics. And a lot of times, the literature that we read is informed by the culture. We both read Frankenstein for this course, and I had a completely different reaction to it. And I wrote a paper about that reaction of how I found some parts of Frankenstein not so sensitive as others. And I think that let me look at it with a completely different lens, which I think is what this course goes to do. It makes you question what you're reading and find critiques of it. And that in turn makes you question the culture around you and better analyze what impacts that could have on other people that might otherwise go in unnoticed and invisible.
Those are both great answers. I have nothing to add, no notes. So thinking more again broadly, how does bioethics and ultimately medical humanities, as we just talked about, assist a student's career path? And I think this is kind of the follow-up question of like, okay, you've convinced me I need to study it, but how does it actually help a career path? And I think this is such an interesting thing. We've already made references to why it's important in health and healthcare to kind of think about these things. But ultimately, it's not just how we as people experience healthcare, but also how people interact with it on a professional level as well. And so we have students who go on to become physicians and physician assistants and nurses and clinical psychologists and all different kinds of clinical professions. But we have students who go into legal work, and that may be adjacent to healthcare. Um, or maybe it's more research based and regulatory work. We've had students who have done our program and gone into kind of an overlap between legal and regulations when it comes to development of healthcare technology and like what does that mean and how are we ethical or unethical or how are we thinking about the different groups that this is affecting, right? And the different cultures, how they're interacting with it. We also have folks who go into arts and humanities. We have people like myself who go into bioethics full time. We also have a segment of students, which I think is really important to highlight, that are searching for discernment. And what we mean by that is they know that they want to be involved in health or healthcare in some capacity. They find it a fascinating field. They find that there's a lot of interest in the bioethics and medical humanities world as it relates to their interests, but they're not exactly sure what that translates to as an official career path. And so a program like this can also expose students to many different career paths as it relates to health, bioethics, medical humanities, and social medicine. And I think that's something our program does really well in how our curriculum is arranged to allow for that exploration or allow for a pivot. And so we have students who come in with one career goal, and then midway through the program, they go, I actually realize that I'm more passionate about this. And because their only concept of jobs in healthcare was either being a doctor or a nurse. And so it's really cool to see kind of students as they explore options as well.
I think the speakers that we have also really do help us look at different things that people are actually actively doing and have someone that we can talk to about it, which has always been so nice to see the different speakers and their different like things that they're doing.
Yes, within our faculty in our department, but even the guest speakers, our clinical faculty, our colleagues around the university and across the country, we all have different backgrounds and expertise and areas that we're working on. I joke that if you just look at like our primary faculty, no two people have the exact same degrees and career path because everybody comes to bioethics and medical humanities through a unique path of their own, which is amazing. So just to kind of reiterate this, we have students who come from all different undergrad majors. We happen to have a panel today where actually all three of us were biology undergrads, including myself. Um, but that is not every student. We have a really good mixture of undergrad majors represented from across our program, and then they go on to a myriad of career paths. So these are just some examples of specific like job titles that we see from our students. And neither one of these slides are exhaustive by any means. It's a wide variety even beyond this. So our master's program, we are one of the oldest master's program in the country, one of the first that was created and developed. And so this upcoming fall, we will be celebrating 31 years of our program being around. Most students complete our program full time, like 1 year. Or 2 semesters. So they start in the fall and they graduate at the end of the spring semester. But some are part-time, some are dual degree, and so it may take them longer, anywhere from 2 to 5 years, depending on their dual degree or length of their plan of study. If the program is 30 credits, so when we talk about full time, most students do 15-ish credits in the fall and 15-ish credits in the spring. That can fluctuate depending on your electives. But it really allows you to kind of dive into your area. And doing 15 credits in a semester is not an unreasonable amount. It's not like we're overloading you with the number of credits. It's hard work. I'm not going to deny that. We're going to challenge you and ask you to step up to the plate and do hard things. But it's designed to be a doable program. Some students will also take the summer semester. So they'll do like fall, spring, summer, and that works to extend their program time a little bit as well. Within the program, 13 and a half credits are electives. We also have up to 160 hours of clinical ethics rotations, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And we have short-term study abroad courses as well. I mentioned that we have three concentrations. And so I want to just highlight that. So by default, all students are in what we call the traditional program, meaning you take the required courses, which you can see all students take that, and then you take your electives, and those are pretty open for what students are interested in. And then we have three concentrations where they might specifically narrow down your electives. So, for instance, those who are in the Medicine, Society, and Culture concentration are required to take Foundations of Medicine, Society, and Culture. And that fits into essentially one of your elective slots. And so to go a little bit more detail into the MSc concentration, I mentioned the foundations of MSc. Both Kayla and Heba mentioned that in that class they read Frankenstein. And that book is really asking students to engage with different pieces of literature throughout the semester. And they are writing critical analyses of these readings. And there's so many, like, that you're doing per week. There's students take turn doing presentations and kind of leading the discussion on these pieces of literature. But I think one of the best things that this course does is it asks students to develop their critical analysis writing skills. So not just being good at critical analysis, but actually translating that into writing it. And I think that's really important. And so it's a unique skill set to have. And it's different than critical analysis in a science paper or a biology class. It's a different skill set. And so that course is a great way to do that. Um, we have the MSc seminar. So this is an opportunity for students to attend various events and talks as it relates to the very broad definition of medicine, society and culture, medical humanities, and social medicine. Um, do either one of you want to say anything about either of those required courses that you take?
I can speak about the course that the foundations course.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the most important courses I had for my development. I love writing. I've written professionally for a long time, and I just is a very important thing for me. And so having this course and having this feedback from the instructor about how I can develop these critical analysis skills was super helpful. The way that the course is structured is also something that it maximizes your potential for writing. You get a lot of honest feedback about what you're writing, about how your reader is taking it, and you also get a lot of chances to improve your writing. It's not just about the grades, it's about that constant evolution of being a better writer. And looking at these texts with that eye has helped me. Honestly, like I said before, it applies way beyond just bioethics because I can read anything. And these skills that I learned from this course help me take a better perspective on what I'm reading and not just honestly fall for whatever the person's telling me, but be a bit more skeptical, look at what the author's doing, and just have that deeper perspective.
Absolutely. I actually had a very different background in that I was not very confident at all in my writing skills before coming to this program. I was a very STEM person. And so MSc helped me to develop that significantly. And that feedback was absolutely incredible for me to have to be able to work on my writing skills and become a lot more confident in them. I think it also just the structure of the class really asks you to think outside of the box. And like everything that we were reading, you were being just kind of trying to challenge it and see what you could come up with and what arguments you can make against it. So I thought that was really incredible. And I am working on finishing up the MSc seminar right now, and that's been really cool to try and find opportunities um, outside of class to use that lens that we developed in MSc. It's been really interesting to try and find talks. And one thing that I recently did was I saw the musical Next to Normal as my one of my MSc seminar requirements, which is about somebody with, I believe, it was a minute ago, but bipolar disorder. And like being able to use that lens and something that I usually enjoy in my free time was just a really cool opportunity. And I think that this program just gives you such a unique way to kind of bring all of your interests, no matter how far out they might be, and squish them into this one huge, awesome thing. So.
I also forgot to mention, but it's something that I always talk about with MSc, and it's my favorite part of MSc, is that you're not just doing it alone. You have a whole cohort with you, and the discussions we had in class were they just meant so much. We had like 2.5 hours every week, and the time flew by so quickly. We got to know each other a lot better. We got to be very vulnerable with each other and have these honest discussions that have never had in any other course. And so I've made a lot of good memories in this course, and I think it's just a very special thing that we were able to do.
That's awesome. So, in addition to those two required courses, your electives somehow need to relate to medicine, society, and culture. Again, medical humanities, social medicine, it's a very broad definition of that. And these are just on the screen, some selected options. We have courses within the department on aging, mental health, queer health. We have study abroad courses so you can look at cross-cultural things. And then we also let students take courses outside of the department as well. Um, all students do the first semester of clinical rotations. And then the second semester, if you're in the MSc concentration, you are allowed to do another semester of rotations. And I would, in full transparency, most students do the second semester of rotations. But students do have the option of a practicum, which is more of a project. And it allows students to get into kind of an area of focus within medicine, society, and culture that they're interested in. And so we've had students placed in all different places. This semester, we have students placed in Magnolia Clubhouse. It's a center that really addresses people with mental illness and chronic mental health diseases and really helps them just in life. And we have a student who is working with a legal clinic that focuses in sex trafficking, which is really interesting. And she gets to spend time both in the clinic, but also in the courtroom to kind of help liaison. And then Hiba is doing a practicum, and she is focusing really on kind of the intersection of spirituality in the clinical setting and thinking about like underserved populations. And in fact, Hiba and I had a conversation just this morning that there are kind of certain religions that tend to get more focus in a healthcare setting because they're the dominant religions, and others that are just more underserved or under represented because that population may not be as large in the area, or it's just not as familiar to people. And so the work she's kind of starting to do in that is really fascinating. For sake of time, I'm going to keep us moving along, though. Um, so I did ask one other of our MSc students, and one of the things that I really wanted to highlight, and that is the director of the concentration is Dr. Eileen Anderson. And in her statement to me, Kit is hoping to go to PA school and really highlighted Dr. Anderson's mentorship and leading that class discussion. And I wanted to make sure that we recognize Dr. Anderson is an incredible director of this concentration. She has a vision, but she's also super personable with the students, and students really can get to know her and she gets to know them. And so I think she does an incredible job of leading this. I know she wishes she could be with us today. She has a conflict, and so she can't be here, but just an incredible thing to highlight also as part of the program. I mentioned our clinical ethics rotation. So this is an opportunity for students to spend 80 hours per semester, so it's up to 160 hours inside our teaching hospitals. And you're going to things like morning rounds, interdisciplinary rounds, you're going to committee meetings, and you're going one-on-one with healthcare professionals like physicians, chaplains, nurses, and social workers. Your role as a student is to be an observer, but you're going in with a critical lens of ethics. But also, you get to see things like culture and religion and family and socioeconomic status and all of those things that we think about in medical humanities and social medicine that impact health. You get to see that in these rotations. And then you also get on a weekly basis to process what you've seen with other students and a clinical ethicist from that hospital to talk about, what's troubling and what do you find interesting and why is this such a big problem, and understanding kind of how patients and healthcare systems are navigated. We also have study abroad courses. Students can participate in 1 or 2 weeks, and students can travel. They count as an elective for our master's program, which is incredible, but they are open to all students across the university. If you are interested in applying to the program, we do have an online application. It's kind of your standard application. So two letters of recommendation, Transcripts for all undergrad. They can be unofficial transcripts for the purpose of applying. Statement of purpose. What's your interest in the topics of bioethics and medical humanities? And then how are you hoping to utilize the program in your career? CV resume and graduate test scores are optional. And then if you're an international student, there's some additional steps. And if you're a current undergrad at Case in the CBM, there's an additional step as well. We do have something called student assistantships, so students can get involved in a teaching, research, or administrative opportunity. In exchange for the number of hours you're working per week, you do receive a partial tuition waiver. And so they are highly competitive, and we think about both need and merit for students for these assistantships. In terms of deadlines, I know I'm going really fast, but in terms of deadlines, our next major deadline is May 15th. So if you are hoping to apply for our student assistantships, you do need to submit your master's application by May 15th. You'll receive a link to the student assistantship application automatically, and you can apply for that by June 1st. Our final deadline is August 1. We do start classes at the end of August. I encourage students to move to Cleveland mid-August so you have time to settle in, plan for that week before classes start for different orientation activities across the university, and get to know your fellow students. I would say on average, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to render an admission decision because we do rolling admissions. So I encourage students get your application in as soon as you can, and we'll get you a decision fairly quickly. One other thing I want to highlight before I look for any questions, and that is our location. So Cleveland is a very underrated city. I joke that people from Cleveland, and I think Ohio in general, are not good at bragging about themselves and all the good stuff we have going on here. At the same time, I also think it helps keep the cost of living very low. And so it's one of the big benefits. There's a lot of apartments around campus. There's a lot of um, coming and going of undergrads and grads and folks that work at the hospitals. And so there's a lot happening here in terms of culture between Playhouse Square, which is the largest theater district in the country outside of Broadway. We have the top ranked Cleveland Orchestra. Cleveland Museum of Art is the second ranked freestanding art museum in the country. Um, we have great food scenes like Little Italy and East 4th Street. We have sports teams, including the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Guardians. And technically the Browns, our football team, not so good, but they are here. And our Cleveland Metro Parks. This might be my favorite part, in addition to Playhouse Square, is the Metro Parks. We have amazing places for if you just want to get away from the idea of being in a city. And they are all around Cleveland and our suburbs. And we're only 20 minutes away from Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And so we also have a national park just in our back door. So that is everything I wanted to highlight. I want to turn it to those who are here if there's any questions that you might have about the program or what we've presented today. If you're also interested, you can scan the QR code and you can schedule a one-on-one meeting with me. I think a lot of students find that helpful as they're in the process of applying to understand how this program is going to specifically match with their interest, their career path, and they'll have a better sense of fit, mutual fit of this program. So I'm looking to see if we have any questions submitted. I'm not seeing any come in. Um, but Kayla and Hiba, do you have any final things you wanted to share, whether it's about the program or the concentration or just kind of Case or Cleveland in general?
I think that this is one of those programs that you're not going to regret even when you're in like the depth of all your essays and your finals. It's something that you have these breathtaking conversations, you have thoughts that just keep on spiraling towards bigger and better thoughts. And it's one of those things that's like it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I am so genuinely happy that I chose this program because I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of good friends here, and I just think I've grown a lot as a person. So even if you're not sure, this is one decision that you're not going to regret making.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that I never saw myself going into this into this before coming here, and I am so glad that I found my way to Case and found my way to this program because it has just been absolutely incredible and has just like fundamentally changed my career trajectory and what I think that I can do with my life. So, yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. If I'm not seeing any questions submitted, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. But again, if you're watching the recording of this and you have any questions, please email us bioethics@case.edu. I'm the one who checks that email. I respond pretty quickly. I will say both Heba and Kayla can attest. I'm pretty good at responding to email in an appropriate time frame. Not everyone has that skill set, but I do. I try my best. Um, but I'm always happy to correspond in an email or schedule a one-on-one meeting to set up time to chat about your specific circumstance, your particular interest, and how we can support you in that process. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for watching the recording. Thank you to both Heba and Kayla for just talking about the program, the concentration. We are so proud to just in a few weeks have you both as alums of the program. You're both so close to being done. It's very exciting. And the beautiful thing is they're going to be joining the ranks of over 1,000 alums. And one of the things I love about our alumni network is they are willing to talk to students and connect with them. And it's such a unique experience for students that you meet someone who's done the program and you talk the same language all of a sudden. And I think that's a really incredible thing. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your day and please reach out with questions.